The battlefield of ghosts. The rain fell in sheets, washing the blood from the ruins of a city that once glowed with lights and laughter. Now only the flickering of dying fires remained, and the whispers of the dead. Captain Rafeeq Haider stood in the middle of a shattered street, his boots sinking into mud mixed with blood and ashes. His uniform was torn, his flag patch barely visible beneath the grime. Behind him, his unit, the 9th Patriot Division, moved cautiously, weapons ready, eyes hollow from months of non-stop combat. They were fighting for survival for the nation, or so they had been told. "Keep moving," Rafeeq barked, his voice echoing off the broken walls. "Check every house, no mercy for the enemy." Private Yusuf, the youngest in the squad, hesitated as he peered into the dark remains of a home. Inside, a table was still set for dinner, untouched. Plates cracked, food rotten. A child's doll lay face down in a puddle. "Sir, there's no one here," Yusuf murmured. "There's always someone," Rafeeq replied coldly. "They hide like ghosts until night falls." The war had lasted so long that truth had become a weapon no one trusted. The enemy was everywhere, and nowhere. As dusk fell, they reached the town square. Statues of heroes stood headless, banners hung torn from lampposts. In the centre, the flag of the nation still fluttered, stained with soot but defiant. Rafeeq ordered his men to rest and set up camp. The radio crackled with static. Command had gone silent again. No new orders, no reinforcements. Only the endless sound of thunder and the low moans of wind through hollow streets. They built a small fire using broken furniture. The flames danced like spirits, lighting up the faces of the soldiers, men who had once laughed, loved, dreamed. Now they were just shadows of patriots. "Captain," said Sergeant Kamal, staring into the fire, "you ever wonder if we're fighting ghosts? Every town looks the same, burned, empty. Maybe we already won. Maybe there's no one left to fight." Rafeeq glared at him. "Watch your tongue. A patriot never questions the cause." Kamal nodded, though doubt darkened his eyes. The rain stopped, and silence fell over the ruined town. Too silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. That's when Yusuf heard it, a faint whisper. It came from the old church at the edge of the square. "Sir, someone's in there," he said, pointing with trembling fingers. Rafeeq grabbed his rifle. "Let's go, Kamal, with me." The heavy doors creaked as they pushed them open. The church smelled of mould and old smoke. Candles had long melted into twisted lumps, but what caught their eyes was the writing on the wall, dozens of phrases carved into stone in shaky, bleeding letters. Open quote, "The nation is dead. The patriots are cursed. We fought for lies." Close quote. A chill ran through Rafeeq's body. "What is this?" he whispered. Kamal knelt beside a dark stain on the floor. "Blood, sir, and fresh." Suddenly, a sound, a faint sob, echoed from behind the altar. They raised their rifles and approached cautiously. A woman sat there, her hair wild, her clothes torn and burned. She clutched something in her hands, a flag, folded neatly, soaked in red. "Who are you?" Rafeeq demanded. She looked up slowly. Her eyes were empty, glassy, as if she'd seen something far beyond death. "They told us to be patriots," she murmured. "They told us to die for the land, but the land died first." Rafeeq's grip tightened on his rifle. "You're the enemy." The woman smiled faintly. "There is no enemy left, Captain. Only the dead." Before he could respond, the church bells began to ring. Slow, heavy, mournful, yet there was no one in the bell tower. The soldiers backed away, their faces pale. The woman began to weep softly, whispering prayers no one understood. And then the candles lit themselves, one by one, circling the soldiers in pale light. Kamal shouted, "Sir, look!" The carvings on the walls began to bleed, the words glowing red like open wounds. The temperature dropped instantly, their breath became fog. Yusuf screamed as something cold brushed past him, unseen but heavy, like a presence made of sorrow. Rafeeq fired a shot into the air. "Everyone out!" They rushed out into the night. Behind them, the church doors slammed shut with a deafening bang. The bells kept ringing, echoing across the ruins like a funeral song for the living. When they reached the square, the fire had gone out, and every flag in sight had turned black. Rafeeq stood motionless, the woman's words haunting him. The land died first. He looked at his soldiers, their eyes filled with fear, not of the enemy, but of the unseen force that ruled the battlefield. And in that moment, Rafeeq began to wonder, what if patriotism itself was the curse that had doomed them all? The night grew colder. Somewhere in the ruins, a voice whispered his name. Open quote, Captain Rafeeq, your nation calls for you, the Patriots. The next morning came without sunlight. A thick grey mist hung over the ruins, swallowing every sound and shape. The soldiers awoke one by one, silent, exhausted, their nerves shredded by the night's horrors. Captain Rafeeq Haider stood beside the cold ashes of their fire, staring at the blackened flag still waving weakly from the lamp-posts. Every instinct told him to leave this cursed town behind, but orders were orders, even if no one was left to give them. "Sergeant Kamal," he called out. "Radio check." Kamal adjusted the broken transmitter. "Still nothing, sir. Command's dead silent." "Then we move north. We find the main camp. The nation still needs us," Rafeeq said, though his voice cracked slightly at the word nation. Private Yusuf glanced around nervously. "Sir, the woman in the church, what if she was right? What if everyone's dead?" Rafeeq glared at him. "We don't believe in ghosts. We fight for our country. Remember that." But deep inside, the captain's certainty was beginning to rot. They started their march through the fog-choked streets. Every window seemed to watch them. Every gust of wind whispered like a dying breath. As they passed a crumbling school building, something caught Yusuf's eye, a figure standing in the yard, waving a torn flag. "Hey, over there!" he shouted. The squad turned their rifles, but the figure didn't move. It was dressed in the same uniform, 9th Patriot Division. Rafeeq narrowed his eyes. "That's one of ours." He approached slowly, boots crunching over glass and bone. When he got close enough, his heart froze. The soldier's face was pale and wet, the skin bluish and stretched too tightly. His eyes were empty sockets filled with wriggling flies. Around his neck hung a rusted dog tag, Lota Aram, one of Rafeeq's men who had died 3 months earlier. Rafeeq stumbled back. Impossible. The corpse's mouth twitched, and it spoke, in a voice both broken and clear. Open quote. "You left us behind, Captain. Patriots never abandon their brothers." Close quote. The thing raised its rifle with jerking movements, and before anyone could react, shots rang out. The squad scattered, firing blindly into the fog. The figure vanished, but the echoes of gunfire bounced endlessly, as if 1,000 invisible soldiers were firing back. When the silence returned, 2 men were missing. "Where's Malik?" "Where's Imran?" Kamal shouted. Only static answered. Rafeeq clenched his fists. "Regroup. Nobody separates. That's an order." They pressed on, but every corner looked the same. The city seemed to twist upon itself, leading them in endless circles. By noon, they found a destroyed bunker at the city's edge. Inside, they discovered the bodies of soldiers, dozens of them, laid out neatly, uniforms pressed, boots polished, flags folded on their chests. Each corpse had a word carved into its forehead, Patriot. Kamal gagged and turned away. Who would do this? Rafeeq knelt beside one of the bodies. It looked peaceful, almost honored, but the blood was still fresh. "They didn't die in battle," he murmured. "They were offered." Yusuf's voice trembled. Offered to who? No one answered. Then the radio came alive, a burst of static followed by a deep, distorted voice. Open quote. "Captain Rafeeq Haider, the nation remembers you. Return to the flag." Close quote. The word sent a chill through everyone's bones. "Sir," Kamal whispered, "that voice, it came from command frequency, but that's impossible. Command was destroyed last week." Rafeeq stared at the radio, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. "Set up a perimeter. We'll rest here until dark." That night the fog thickened into something almost solid. They lit no fire. The silence was unbearable, not peaceful, but expectant. Rafeeq couldn't sleep. He kept hearing faint footsteps outside the bunker. When he finally looked, he saw them, shapes moving in the mist. Dozens of figures, all wearing the same uniform, all holding flags. He shouted for his men, and they opened fire. The flashes of gunfire lit up faces, familiar faces, men who had died under his command. Yusuf screamed, "They're ours! Those are our soldiers!" The ghostly patriots didn't attack. They simply advanced, chanting in unison, their voices hollow and thunderous. Open quote. "For the nation, for the land, for the flag." Close quote. Their bodies bled smoke instead of blood. Their eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the flames of wars long past. Rafeeq froze. He recognized every one of them. Each man had fallen in a different battle. Each had sworn to fight to the last breath. But now they had returned, not to fight for the nation, but against the living who still believed in it. A deafening scream pierced the air, Kamal's voice. Rafeeq turned to see his sergeant being dragged into the mist by unseen hands. He fired wildly, chasing after him, but there was nothing there. Only the echo of Kamal's last words. Open quote, "They're calling you too, Captain." Close quote. By dawn, only Rafeeq and Yusuf remained. They stumbled through the ruins, broken and bleeding. The mist finally began to lift, revealing the horizon, a wasteland of charred tanks and twisted bodies. Yusuf dropped to his knees. "Sir, why are we still here? The war's over. The whole world's dead." Rafeeq stared blankly at the rising sun, red as blood. "We don't stop, Private. We keep fighting. That's what patriots do." But even as he said it, he saw movement on the hill. Hundreds of soldiers marching toward them in perfect formation, flags raised high. Their faces glowed pale, lifeless. It was the army of the dead nation. And leading them was Sergeant Kamal, eyes black, mouth twisted into a cruel grin. He saluted sharply. "Reporting for duty, Captain. The nation wants you to join us." The wind howled across the battlefield as Rafeeq raised his rifle, trembling. His mind was cracking, torn between duty and terror, between honor and damnation. Open quote, "A true patriot never surrenders," whispered a voice behind him. Close quote. He turned and saw the woman from the church standing in the mist, holding the same blood-soaked flag. Her eyes glowed red. "The nation is hungry, Captain. Feed it." Rafeeq's scream echoed through the empty land as the dead closed in, chanting the anthem of a country long forgotten. Haider awoke beneath a collapsed wall, half buried in dust and rubble. His ears rang with silence. No gunfire, no footsteps, not even the wind. He pushed himself up, wincing as pain shot through his side. The sky above was blood-red, though the sun had vanished. The mist was gone, but the air carried a strange heaviness, like the breath of something vast and unseen watching him. Private Yusuf lay a few meters away, trembling but alive. "Sir, where are we?" he whispered. Rafeeq looked around. The ruins were gone. In their place stood a vast battlefield stretching to infinity, littered with skulls, rifles, and shattered flags. Black crows circled endlessly above. "We're still in the city," Rafeeq said slowly, though he didn't believe it. "Or maybe we've crossed into something else." They began walking through the field. Every step echoed unnaturally, as if the ground beneath them were hollow. Everywhere they looked, they saw soldiers frozen in death, some standing upright with bayonets raised, others kneeling mid-prayer. The faces of the dead were familiar. Rafeeq stopped in horror. "That's me," he breathed. A corpse wearing his same uniform, same badge, same scar across the cheek stood among the dead ranks, lifeless eyes staring straight ahead. Yusuf gasped. "Sir, that's impossible." Before he could finish, the body blinked. Open quote, "We died long ago, Captain," it said, voice identical to his, "but you refused to believe." Close quote. Rafeeq stumbled backward, dropping his rifle. The corpse reached out with a trembling hand. "The nation feeds on belief. It used our loyalty to stay alive. And when the blood stopped flowing, it made more soldiers, shadows of the patriots who never stopped fighting." Rafeeq's mind spun in chaos. "No, we're not dead. I'm not dead." The ghostly version of himself smiled, a broken, tragic smile. Every man who dies for his country becomes its ghost, but when too many die, the land forgets peace. It only remembers war. Then the corpse dissolved into ash, carried away by a wind that smelled of gunpowder and graves. Rafeeq and Yusuf kept walking until they reached a massive crater in the earth. In its center stood the national monument, a towering statue of a soldier holding a flag. Its face was eroded, but the flag was pristine, fluttering even though there was no wind. The ground around the monument pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Rafeeq approached slowly. The flag was whispering, words that twisted through his mind like smoke. Open quote, "Loyalty, sacrifice, blood." Close quote. Open quote, "Feed the soil, keep the land alive." Close quote. Open quote, "Patriot." Close quote. He fell to his knees, clutching his head. The whispers grew louder, turning into a chorus of voices, millions of soldiers chanting their oaths, promising eternal service to the motherland. Then a deeper voice rose above them all, ancient and thunderous. Open quote, "Rafeeq Haider, the nation remembers your devotion. You kept fighting when all others fell. You are chosen to renew the pact." Close quote. The ground split open, and a river of red light poured out, liquid fire made of blood and memory. The statue's eyes glowed, and its mouth opened, exhaling smoke shaped like faces. Yusuf screamed and fired his rifle, but the bullets vanished in mid-air. The statue turned its burning gaze toward him. Open quote. Doubt is treason. Close quote. With a flash of crimson light, Yusuf's body froze, his skin turning to stone, his mouth still open in terror. The flag wrapped itself around him like a serpent, absorbing his soul. Rafeeq fell backward, weeping. What do you want from me? The voice answered, shaking the world. Open quote. A nation without blood is a corpse. A patriot's duty never ends. You will lead the new war against those who forget. Close quote. Rafeeq's body convulsed as invisible hands lifted him to his feet. His veins glowed red. His eyes burned with fire. The flag descended slowly from the statue and wrapped around his shoulders. Images flashed through his mind. Endless battles, new cities burning, fresh recruits chanting oaths they didn't understand. He saw children raised to fight, not for peace, but for the hunger of the soil that demanded sacrifice. He realized then that the nation itself was no longer a homeland. It was a living entity, a parasitic spirit feeding on death. Every act of patriotism was a ritual. Every war was an offering. And he, Captain Rafeeq Haider, was its next priest. He tried to resist. No, I won't let you use me. The voice roared like thunder. Open quote. You already did. Every bullet you fired, every order you gave, every word you spoke of loyalty, they were prayers to me. Close quote. The ground erupted, and the skeletons of fallen soldiers rose in unison, saluting him. Their eye sockets glowed red, and in one synchronized motion they chanted, Open quote, Patriot, 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 close quote. The flag tightened around Rafeeq's chest until he couldn't breathe. His scream turned into laughter, deep, broken laughter that echoed across the battlefield. When it stopped, his face was calm. His eyes were cold. He stood tall, now wearing a uniform untouched by dirt or time. A crimson emblem, a burning flag, appeared over his heart. The voice whispered softly, almost tenderly now, Open quote. Rise, Commander. The war begins anew. Close quote. Rafeeq turned to the horizon. He could see lights in the distance, cities still alive, still breathing, unaware of what awaited them. He raised his arm, and the army of the dead followed, marching silently behind him. For a moment, as the wind carried the anthem of his homeland through the air, Rafeeq felt something human flicker inside him. Regret, sorrow, love. But it was too late. The land had claimed him. He was no longer a man. He was the patriot, the eternal commander of a nation that would never die because it would never stop killing. Thousands, maybe millions, all wearing the same uniform, their faces pale and hollow, their eyes burning with a faint crimson light. At the front stood Captain Rafeeq Haider, wrapped in the living flag that pulsed gently like a heart. The voice of the nation hummed inside his mind. Vast, ancient, commanding. Open quote, Lead them, Commander. The living have forgotten sacrifice. They must remember. Close quote. Rafeeq's gaze drifted across his army. Men he had once buried, soldiers who had died for the land, now reborn as instruments of vengeance. Their bayonets glowed faintly, whispering hymns of loyalty. He lifted his rifle. The army followed the motion, thousands of barrels rising in perfect harmony. Open quote, For the nation, they roared. Close quote. The ground trembled. The march began. As they advanced, the landscape shifted, from the scorched ruins of the dead world into the green fields of the living. Cities appeared in the distance, untouched by war. Children played, people worked, oblivious to the horror approaching beneath a veil of fog. Each step the army took, the world around them dimmed. Grass withered, birds fell silent, rivers turned black. Rafeeq felt the pull of two forces inside him, the will of the nation urging him forward and a faint human whisper trying to stop him. It was Yusuf's voice, echoing from somewhere deep within. Open quote, Sir, you said we fight for life, not for death. Close quote. Rafeeq froze mid-step. The flag tightened around his chest as if sensing betrayal. Open quote. Do not listen, the nation hissed. The living forget, they betray, they deserve the cleansing fire. Close quote. Rafeeq clutched his head, torn apart by the screams inside his skull. He saw flashes of his past, his mother's smile, his daughter's laughter, the oath he took as a young recruit. None of it was about killing. It had been about protecting. He looked at the soldiers behind him, all the faces of his brothers in arms. This isn't protection, he whispered. This is slavery. The voice of the nation thundered. Open quote, Patriotism is sacrifice. You are my heart, Rafeeq. Without you, the nation dies. Close quote. Rafeeq fell to his knees, clutching the ground. Then maybe it's time for it to die. The flag screamed, a sound not of cloth but of countless souls shrieking at once. It burst into flames, wrapping Rafeeq in a pillar of red fire. The undead army stopped marching, their movements faltering, uncertain. From within the inferno, Rafeeq's voice rose, broken but defiant. Open quote, "A nation built on endless war doesn't deserve to live." Close quote. He tore the flag from his shoulders. The fabric writhed like a serpent, lashing at him, trying to climb back, whispering seductive lies. Open quote. "They'll forget you. They'll forget the heroes." Close quote. But Rafeeq's grip tightened. Let them forget. Let them live. He thrust the burning flag into the earth. The ground split open, and a wave of red light shot upward, blinding, deafening. The undead soldiers screamed as the light consumed them, their bodies dissolving into dust and ashes carried away by the wind. The monument of war collapsed, and with it, the curse that had bound the nation's soul for centuries. When the light faded, Rafeeq found himself standing alone on a quiet hill. The sky was blue again. The smell of smoke had vanished. In the valley below, he could see the living world, cities shining, rivers flowing, life continuing. He looked down at his hands. They were cracked, glowing faintly. His body was fading. A soft voice spoke behind him, the woman from the church, her eyes calm now, no longer cursed. "You did what no patriot ever dared, Captain. You ended the war." Rafeeq smiled faintly. "Did I save them, or just buy them time?" "The nation will live," she said, "but this time not through blood, through memory." Rafeeq turned his gaze toward the horizon, where the wind carried faint echoes of a national anthem, no longer a call to arms, but a lullaby for the dead. Open quote, "Tell them," he whispered as his form turned to light. "Tell them the land is only alive when its people are." Close quote. The woman nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. And with a final gust of wind, Captain Rafeeq Haider, the last patriot, vanished into the dawn. Epilogue. The new flag. Years later, children played in the square of a rebuilt city. A monument stood there, not of soldiers, but of farmers, teachers, and mothers holding hands beneath a new flag. At its base, engraved in stone, were Rafeeq's final words. Open quote, "A patriot does not die for the land. He lives for the people." Close quote. As evening fell, a faint breeze passed through the flag, and for a brief second the cloth shimmered red, not with blood but with light. Somewhere beyond unseen, a voice whispered peacefully, "Open quote, rest now, patriots. The nation remembers." Close quote.